Have you ever talked to your dog and suddenly watched them tilt their head to one side with that look of total concentration? Most people's first reaction is to think that it's just adorable and leave it at that. But that little head tilt has several possible explanations, and they're not all the same. In fact, the last one may be a warning sign you shouldn't ignore. But let's start with the first reason. Your dog may be adjusting their ears. It sounds obvious, but very few people ever stop to think about it. Dogs have extraordinary hearing. They can pick up frequencies as high as 65,000 hertz, while we only reach about 20,000. But there's one thing humans are actually better at, pinpointing exactly where a sound is coming from. The reason comes down to anatomy. Dogs have ear pinning, the outer flaps of the ears, which can partially or completely cover the ear canal and act like a barrier to sound. To work around that interference, your dog shifts their head until they find the angle where they hear best. Basically, it's like adjusting an antenna, but this depends a lot on the breed. A Cocker Spaniel with those big floppy ears that completely cover the ear canal needs to make that adjustment much more than a German Shepherd whose ears are already well positioned. That's why you'll see this head tilt much more often in some breeds than in others. But if this were the only reason, Border Collies wouldn't do it so much. And that brings us to the second reason. Your dog is processing what you're saying. In 2021, a study led by researcher Andrea Somasi took a closer scientific look at this behavior, and what they found can really help explain what's going on. In the study, they compared two groups of dogs. Some had learned the names of their toys, and others hadn't. The result? The dogs who had learned to connect words with objects tilted their heads 43% of the time when they heard a toy's name. By contrast, the dogs who hadn't made that connection did it barely 2% of the time. But the most important thing wasn't that percentage. The most surprising part was that all those dogs always tilted their heads to the same side, no matter where the owner was speaking from. If it were only about locating the sound, the side would change depending on where the sound came from. But what they saw was that it didn't change. The team concluded that when a dog tilts their head, they may actually be processing information. In other words, your dog hears a word or a sound and tries to connect it with something they already know, like an image, an object, or an experience. It's as if your dog's brain were searching through memory. Does this sound familiar? What do I connect this with? So, if your dog tilts their head when they hear a familiar word, they're not just being cute. They may actually be thinking it through. Now, there's another fascinating theory, and it's based on the idea that your dog's muzzle may block part of your face, so they tilt their head to see you better. Psychologist and canine behavior expert Stanley Coren suggested something that sounds silly until you try it. A dog's muzzle can block the lower part of your face, and that area is exactly where the mouth is, one of the most expressive parts of our face. To test it, make a fist and hold it in front of your nose. That's roughly what your dog sees when they look straight at you. Now, tilt your head slightly to one side, and you'll notice you can see better. Coren surveyed more than 580 dog owners and found that 71% of those with long-muzzled dogs, like greyhounds or Labradors, said their dogs tilted their heads often. By contrast, that number dropped to 52% in flat-faced breeds, like boxers or pugs, because they have less muzzle blocking their field of vision. Coren himself acknowledges that the muzzle doesn't explain everything, since even flat-faced dogs still tilt their heads quite a bit. But the difference between the two groups is too clear to ignore. That said, there's another possible reason you shouldn't rule out. Your dog may have learned it from you. Think about it. When your dog tilts their head, you may react right away. You smile, use a sweeter voice, pet them, or even give them a treat. According to the American Kennel Club, when a behavior is followed by something pleasant, like attention, affection, or a reward, the dog is more likely to repeat it. And of course, if tilting their head gets you to look at them and talk to them, they learn fast. That doesn't mean your dog is trying to manipulate you. Your dog has simply discovered that this gesture works. So far, everything we've talked about is completely normal. The problem starts when the head stays tilted for no clear reason and doesn't go back to normal. That's when it's worth checking with your veterinarian. When a dog keeps their head tilted continuously, it could point to a vestibular problem, a disorder of the system that controls balance. The most common causes are inner ear infections, trauma, tumors, or hypothyroidism. In older dogs, it can sometimes appear without a clear cause and improve within a week or two, but a veterinarian should always evaluate it. The key is knowing how to tell the difference. If your dog tilts their head for a moment when they hear you talk, that's your same curious, attentive dog as always. But if you notice any of these signs, the head is tilted continuously with no connection to any sound, Your dog loses balance or has trouble staying on their feet. The eyes make fast, involuntary movements from side to side, which is called nystagmus. Your dog is vomiting or seems unusually low energy. In these cases, don't wait to see if it gets better. Call your vet or go straight in. And now I recommend the video on screen where I explain why dogs scratch the floor or the bed. Watch it to discover the reason behind this curious behavior.